Okay, so it's about time we got started. Doesn't look like the most visited live stream, but we're not going to let that stop us. Yeah. So my name is Marc Thompson, and I'm currently the president of SLACKATTACK.ch, the Bernese Slackline crew. Bern is the capital of Switzerland, for those of you who don't know. And it's one of the oldest slackline clubs or associations out there. I'm just going to use the word club from now on because it's shorter and more simple. I personally don't consider myself at all the reason SLACKATTACK is still going, but I am part of that reason. Furthermore, at more than a decade old, SLACKATTACK was founded in 2019, we are doing better than ever. We have more members, more people doing work on the board, more indoor possibilities, and are generally doing quite well for ourselves. SLACKATTACK is, however, a primarily urban phenomenon, so I'm no expert on getting slackline communities in the middle of nowhere started or sustaining them. So if that's the case for you listening, stick around to the end. Maybe we can discuss this in the chat. Before we dive deep into how a club works, let's have a look at the basic sort of building blocks that the word slacklining consists of and what makes it go round in the first place. And thanks for listening from the get-go. So as an individual slackliner inside the slackline world, you are connected to a community and to gear manufacturers. And take these terms very... Okay. Sorry about that. So I lost the connection. I'll pick back up at the main ingredients of the Slack world slide. Anyway, so I've been picking back up at the main ingredients of the Slackline world slide. So as an individual slackliner inside the Slackline world, you are connected to the community and to the gear manufacturers. And you can take these terms very broadly. They represent all the people either enjoying slacklining, working for it, or trying to turn a profit on it. Now, all these ingredients can be very diverse, but the interesting one is community or communities, which can manifest in especially different and diverse ways. A community may be an online group and center around memes, or it may be a very wholesome bunch of people who Slack together locally. Even the ISA, in my opinion, giving out recommendations and working together is a form of community. So as I said, a community is a very broad term here. Just people working together to move some aspect of slacklining in some direction. But the nice thing about getting your community, whatever shape or form it might have, organized by founding some sort of club, is that you are increasing the possibilities you have towards the other aspects of the slackline world, gear manufacturers and other slackers. And more importantly, you are also increasing your possibilities towards players outside of the slackline world. So I am talking about gear manufacturer authorities, and that's often one of the reasons clubs are actually founded. So in the case of SLACKATTACK, our OG members, they got together mainly to get access to the campground that we use for Bern City Slack, our festival. And they got together to form a club to ask the city to give them access to this campground. The nice thing is that a well-established club is just going to be helpful when dealing with all sorts of outside and inside slackline world influences. Outside influences such as working with and against local authorities, as previously mentioned. You're going to create financial possibilities you didn't previously have, probably. And you might even use it to overcome some social differences between the slackliners that kind of exist in your area. Economics, financial differences also. It can give you the shield that you need to work against these difficulties and eventually find solutions to them. On top of these reasons, what other reasons warrant a club and what ingredients do you need? What's going to be the main ingredients for your club? I drew a very beautiful tree here, and luckily enough, it's 2020, and a lot of the ingredients are easier than they were 10 years ago to come by, or they're just given. Slacklining is no longer completely unknown. Pioneers have figured out the sketchy stuff, and relatively cheap gear is available for complete beginners to get started. Of course, that depends on your part of the world, but it's mostly accessible. The attention slacklining has received means you no longer have to need to explain the sport to everyone you come across. The pioneers have created enough amazing pictures for you to inspire people, or maybe you yourself already have. And the cheaply manufactured ratchet kits make opening doors for beginners quite easy. However, to get a club off the ground, you need a bit more than that. You need some initiative, you need to put in some work, and you need to consider culture, gear, and space. Well, you don't need to, but those are nice starting points to think about what your club is going to be, what it's going to make, and how it's going to sustain itself. Now, by culture, I mean what your club or group of people, soon to be a club, feels like, and what it is influenced by. Questions like how you treat each other, how you treat newcomers. Do you even open the doors for newcomers? Are your spots suitable for newcomers? And the way you use them. What do your members think about the club? Do they think the whole bureaucracy is a waste of time, or are they all for it and on board? Do you regularly hang out with non-slackers? Could they be part of your club? Would you maybe have a multidisciplinary, multicultural club where it's not only about slacklining, but also about juggling? Could that work together? Where do you get your inspiration? How well are all the people you are in contact with connected to the online Slackline community? What are their interests? What's going to keep them engaged? These questions are in some matter or another going to dictate the face of your club, who it is geared towards, and what needs it aims to cover for people. Oftentimes, in my experience, you might think you are the most open group of people, but actually, when you ask people, they say, geez, these guys are all really good at slacklining and I'm kind of scared to join their sessions. And those kind of things are something you have to pay very special attention to. Also, once the club is kind of running, you might notice that some people are doing most of the work. And it's going to take some active effort to kind of bring those issues to the front. And maybe you'll find that some people are unhappy doing a lot of the work. And that has to be discussed in order for things to be sustainable. Let's move on to gear. Now, gear, maybe you have a great group on hand and you live in a country where it's difficult to bring gear into the mix. Everyone is stoked to slackline, but no one has the gear. Here, founding a club. And no one ever said this needs to be an official club. If your country is very difficult about founding clubs, maybe you're just gonna make an informal club and decide together we are now a club. But anyway, founding a club in a country where it's difficult to get gear can allow you to pool some money. It can allow you to join your resources, even if it's not an official club, and access gear. This can be a little frustrating because different people have different ideas on, what gear you might need. But I find that investing in a bunch of beginner kits and helping more beginners get started can be really cool. This can also be one of the first hooks that gets people to join your club. If your club has 20 beginner lines and members can, for maybe $50 a year, like rent them and get advice from you on how to use them and maybe a tutorial, that could be a reason for people to join your club if you don't want to like give fixed workshops. One of the questions on my slide here is it selfish to buy Highline gear? And that's one I want to touch upon later because it points towards a very important issue in sustainability. But for now, look at gear as something that a club can help you access because more money, and as something you can use to interest people in your club. Let's move to the third branch of my badly drawn tree, space. Space is, for me, the most important aspect of this tree. So your club might have nice culture and good access to gear, or you're in Switzerland and everyone just has money to buy their own gear. But how about space? In our case, Bern, it's definitely the biggest challenge, but it's also the one that just offers huge rewards. And it makes our community that much more sustainable. And that's an effect we've really been seeing. Enough space to Slackline can make your community prosper in a much nicer way than my awfully drawn tree from a few slides ago. Obtaining a space you are officially allowed to be in or renting something is oftentimes difficult or even impossible as a single person. Sometimes the public spaces you hang out in just fail to make other people join you because they think you're way too good, and maybe getting in contact with the city and getting a few fixed beginner lines in would be a nice move. But I can just tell you, like, we have an indoor space in the cold winter now, or it could be a nice house that has a big enough room to train in, a waterline spot that the city only allows you as an association. Those are going to be community makers. As long as you have people who want to join you in those spaces because those spaces are so awesome, your community is going to prosper. And now, sometimes you'll need a club to get those spaces, and I want to give you some examples why. Sorry about that bit. That was a bit all over the place. So in Bern, for example, we finally found an indoor gym that was open to everyone, that was more or less affordable. It was pretty expensive, but we could just about afford it. And what happened is we gained so many members because there was this big indoor gym, and you could just come and slackline and juggle and do whatever you want. And what happened was we imposed this thing that you could come once for free, and then you had to join SLACKATTACK to be part of this gym. What happened is 15, 20 people joined. They all paid their yearly fee, which is really low for Switzerland especially. It's 30 francs, which is like 28 euros, $30. And the space really made our club prosper. Another interesting example of space really making a club prosper is Zurich. They had a waterline spot that was doing really well, and then they got shut down. And they already had a club. It's called the Slacklions Zurich. And they got on, they had a bit of a discussion with the city, and it took a long time. But now the waterline spot is open. It's a non-swimming area. And members of the Slacklions, and only members of the Slacklions, are allowed to use that spot to waterline. As a consequence, and I'm sure there's many other good reasons because they also have an indoor training, but the Slacklines now are the largest club in Switzerland. And if you want to waterline in Zurich, you have to be a member of them. Like you can say that's not very nice because you're forced to be a member of a club to enjoy this cool spot. But without the club, the spot would probably be gone because the city has someone to talk to. Anyway, so you founded your club. You've got your culture right. It feels good to hang out. People are stoked on the gear they can use. There's an indoor spot for the cold winter, or you might be a multidisciplinary club. It's just a cool thing. So what happens once it's going? Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think you'll ever feel, I at least never have felt that way, that the association or the club is just running by itself, in my experience. But there's that feeling that you are growing. And people who tell you, oh, I think SLACKATTACK is so cool and I'm so stoked to be a part of it and I want to help. And that's one hell of a feeling. I mean, it's great. The first time someone told me, thank you for doing this, thank you for putting in all this effort. I also want to be part of the board. That's just amazing. And that motivates you and keeps you going. But I found that there is a balance that can kill clubs. I mean, it's not universal, and I'm sure it doesn't happen anywhere. But there's this balance between hanging out with the veterans, with the people who've been doing it for a long time and doing cool projects, and also offering activities and open doors for beginners so that your club can grow and regrow and have new members. Because for the 10 years SLACKATTACK has existed, only one person, and that is Thomas Buckingham, has been with the club like actively and all the time. And I just came in about 1/3 of the way in, and from all the people that I kind of saw slacklining when I got started, there's only 1 or 2 or 3 left. So just be aware that there's this balance you need to strike between keeping the old guys engaged and keeping the beginners coming. And it's a balance that I've seen a lot of clubs fail at, or maybe not a lot, but at least enough for it to strike me as weird. And I would say there's 2 extremes. There's the super altruistic clubs, where the club itself is more important than doing awesome stuff and highlining and, all the things that we would call slacklifing. And there's this really weird expectation that is created in these clubs where everyone is expected to work for free and to, work for the club and only go slackline in the park and do things for beginners. And there's this other kind of club where a few friends just highline a bunch and they need to get access to a few highline spots, or, they just want to pool money and get a ton of gear, and maybe the city has an easy benefits program for sports clubs so they can grab some money. And then they eventually die out because no new people ever came in and they had kids or got a stressful job or whatever. So those are the 2 kind of tendencies I've seen. And what I come to from that is this striking a balance thing. So I think you should strike a balance between giving workshops, introducing new people through, instructors. Mellow sessions in the park are important, just so, people have a nice entry point with short lines. There might be acro yoga and juggling, which loosens things up, which gets people interested that come from a different community, but they might be really stoked on slacklining once they try it. And they maybe wouldn't have otherwise. They wouldn't have come to the park just to slackline, but because they wanted to acro and then they tried it, they actually noticed, oh, it's cool. And trust me, it works. And then there's the other side of the balance, doing highline, trickline sessions, whatever is the interest of your club. Not only spending association money on gyms and stuff for beginners, but also just like being a little selfish and spending it on cool highline gear. And one of the maybe more controversial points, paying people to introduce beginners. So if you have the possibility, pay people for courses. Like if you have a weekly training and it's all run on a volunteer basis, that's cool. But if you want to do this for 5 years, unless it's like super low key, think about generating just enough income off it so you can pay the person who's there every week setting up the lines. So you can give them something back. And then also what I find, we have courses that run through the winter and through spring and autumn, but we don't have anything in summer. And that's a really nice balance, because then in summer, everyone can do whatever they want, go on a bunch of highline adventures and stuff. And for the rest of the year, they can then take that inspiration and then that knowledge and give it to new beginners and keep them interested in SLACKATTACK, the club, whatever floats your boat. So Having a club is a bunch of work, but it doesn't need to be that hard. And if you're smart about it, you can make it really cool for the knowledgeable people. You can reward them. These knowledgeable people are probably going to be on your board, on like the direction of the club. And yeah, don't be shy to reward yourself. Don't be selfish, but like be realistic. Hey, you're doing a ton of work, and it's okay if you have a budget of 5,000 euros a year. It's okay to spend 1,500 on Epic Island gear and maybe pay for a trip to the mountains for just the 5 people who are doing the most work, because otherwise your club is going to feel like more work than it should. And so in that way, beginners and veterans can reap the benefits of having a club. A few examples of this balance not really working, which I discussed with Ellie Schulte and Toby Höller. I met them at the THC, both splendid people. And Ellie was asking around, like, what's important for a club to work? Because they are founding a club in Ulm, which is a university town, and they are going to get a lot of people cycling through, as I described with SLACKATTACK. People are going to come, people are going to go. And I didn't really know what to answer. I told her, like, go with the flow, roll with the punches. People are going to leave and don't get upset about it. And then Toby came in and said, I find it's really important to strike this balance. And he actually brought me onto this point. He actually said, our club was so focused on just doing park workshops for beginners that I just lost interest because I didn't actually slackline for myself anymore. I think the Stuttgart club still exists and is doing fine, but I know, like, Toby, who I'm sure was a cool guy to work with, is kind of not on board too much anymore at times because of that balance. Another example is Vienna, the Vienna Slackliners. I know they are still existing, but they don't have like a weekly structured training or something, or they do have one, but it's just Harry, which is a super cool guy, going to the park every week and setting up long lines. And unless you have this structure where someone's actually offering and actively pulling people into the sport, your club is not going to replenish. So just consider having the balance. Having cool events for the pros. Maybe you don't have to organize anything. Maybe you just support it a bit financially or something, but also having cool offerings for the beginners. And don't be shy to spend, if you can, a bit of money on that. It's not a definite answer to running a club. It's not a definite answer to having an awesome community and having it sustainable, because at the end of the day, you also need some luck to be in a place where there's a high enough density of stoked slackliners to actually make this work. So with that said, in case I missed something, in case you want me to go any deeper on any of these points that I made, feel free to just hit me up with a question in the live chat, and I'll stick around for a little while to answer those questions. Thank you so much for listening so far. It was fun to throw this together yesterday, and I hope you got something from it. So shoot with the questions. So I'm getting 2 questions, one on Facebook from Kat and one in the live chat from Mladen. I'm going to go with Kat first. She's asking a very, very interesting one. And that is, how do you justify asking people for money? It's often met with a negative initial reaction. Absolutely. This is a difficult topic. Asking people for money is always going to be hard. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be the easiest for me is space. So if you as a club are able to rent a space, then it's very obvious for people, like, this space needs to be rented in the winter or something. It's going to cost 2,000 euros a winter, and there's 20 people each training over a certain amount of weeks. So it's only logical that every time we need to pay 20 whatever your currency is to go there. usually you can do this cheaper than a training space that is commercial, because you are still a non-profit organization, and maybe you can just give a very small amount to a person responsible in the first year, so it's going to take some initial effort. So the space is the easiest way of justifying, I find, asking people for some money. And in other tactics are just to make it very clear to people what they are profiting from. So I have to be honest, in Bern, a large part of this is Thomas. So Thomas goes waterlining all the time. We now have gear storage at our spots. So he's there, he sets up the gear, he has the knowledge, and it's just very obvious for people that a lot of this would not exist without the club. And it's all about communication. It's not the perfect answer, Kat, I'm sorry, but that's how far as I can go. So Mladen asked, there's that they are forming a community club in Serbia, and there's a couple of groups really interesting to start, and they have a good base, but he's interested in how they do their promotion, some good practices. So promotion, honestly, I think what sets SLACKATTACK kind of apart in terms of promotion is the festival, so throwing any kind of event. But what really brings members in was regular training. As soon as we, like a few years ago, got regular training and had people actually, you gave people the possibility to come train every week, our numbers really started going up. Because honestly, we tried a lot of promotional things, like we do a lot of on social media, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It definitely works to a certain extent, but the only way that really like gets every 10th person into to slacklining at least a bit and actually enjoying it is really having regular trainings and having someone there who like pulls them in. I can't give you a definite answer on like how you do it in the beginning, because you don't really have money, you don't really have the space, and it's a lot of work to have a regular training going. But for me, the regular training and making it really accessible in the beginning, and especially like being there and saying, hey, welcome, maybe hugging them if that's appropriate, and just giving them a nice start into the sport, really was the best promotion that's been getting people slacklining. So, Paul. Hi, Paul. Thanks for listening. Paul, a friend of mine, asked, do you have anything to mention about inter-club cooperations? Like maybe Slackline Hamburg has something to learn from Slackline Berlin and vice versa. Any experience organizing more clubs to meet, play, and learn from each other? Actually, no. This is something I've been, or like in Switzerland, we've been meaning to do more. Zurich and Bern, the Slack Lions and SLACKATTACK are two of the bigger clubs around, and we haven't really cooperated on much, but I think there's a lot of potential there. But I can't really offer you much advice on that. It's cool, like if you do something as a club, just think of other clubs and try to make the invite go out far enough. Then Johan, they also pay for, Johan, what do you mean by they also pay for insurance? How do you legally mitigate the personal risks that come with the sport? Okay, okay, I know it. So Johan Mladen want to know about the legal issues about paying for insurance. Now, Switzerland definitely is one of the most bureaucratic countries around, and we have from the national federation, this is a bit of a cheat, but I mean, we're just lucky to have this from the national federation. So Thomas Buckingham kind of did a lot of work on this. He basically got an insurance company to insure the national federation, like the umbrella, and then all the clubs that are member of it. It's a basic insurance. It doesn't cover everything. It basically covers liability when we as an association mess something up. But just the fact that you are an association already makes it way better than doing it as a single person. This kind of depends on your country, so I can't give a definite answer, but in Switzerland, the association is going to be responsible for the association's activities. So if we are hit with like huge legal fees because someone sues us, or if we have to pay a huge medical bill, that's just going to drain, it's first going to drain the association's bank account, and then it probably defunct the association before any one of us gets, attacked personally. I can't really say more on that because that's not my specialty, but even just the fact of having a club is going to help. Does that answer your question? Kat followed up with another interesting question that's a bit further out there. How do you keep track of highline gear usage for safety reasons? So, Kat, to be honest, we've been just as shit at that as everyone else, but we have been thinking about this and we want to get started with Slackline, with tracking our highline gear. And we have a storage room. This was another like space. I would say that's in the space category. We are renting for 200 francs a month, which is quite expensive. We are renting a storage room right next to the train station, which is also one of the reasons why we are getting more members, because people can just come from the train after work and walk into the storage room with the code, and then grab a slackline and go Slack before they go home. But one of the reasons for this storage room is that we have all the gear there and we can keep track of it. Now, what we are trying to do is assign every piece of gear a number, and then have an Excel sheet that you can kind of automatically with a QR reader or something scan the number, and then that updates it into the Excel sheet. And what we use to mark our gear is tough tags. So I'll send a link into the chat of tough tags, and we use those to kind of mark our gear, and we're hopefully going to start keeping track of it for insurance reasons. Quite often what we do though, and that's a nice trick to get more gear, is when we have a big like highline show, which only happens like once a year or maybe twice a year, we actually get the company who is wanting that highline show to just pay for a new webbing. So like we put in an offer and we say, we're going to need this much money for our people rigging, we're going to need this much money for our people, for our athletes, and we're going to need this much money for additional gear, and then we just get them to pay for a new slackline. So Kat just asked if we have a gear partnership with someone. We have had partnerships, nothing like over the top, very small things like clothing and stuff. We've got rebates. Swiss Slackline started a year or two ago with the rebate program where you can get cheaper gear, and now the ISA is also doing that. So if you have a club, another nice selling point for your members is that through the ISA you can get money off the rebates off certain slackline manufacturers, and you find that information somewhere on the ISA website. Maybe So maybe the last thing I'm gonna. Oh, okay. 2 more questions. How often do you organize trainers trainings? So I guess Paul is referring to um, trainer C type instructors in trainings where we teach people how to teach slacklining. We don't organize those nearly enough. We do like 1 a year, maybe 2, and it's great. I mean, when we do organize them, we usually have a few people coming to them, and yeah, we just do 1 or 2 a year. I'm trying to find something intelligent to say about these, but I guess we could do more. On the other hand, the focus doesn't need to be on teaching a lot of people how to actually teach slacklining well. I think the culture that you have inside your association of helping each other is going to be more helpful than teaching a few people how to be good trainers. But yeah, don't quote me on that. But yeah, I mean, what's like just the general atmosphere we have at our trainings, I think does more than the instructor trainings does normally. Ooh, what kind of space is the indoor space we have, and how do you set up the lines? Mladen asks. So we have a gym, like a full-on sports gym. The city of Bern has a whole register. Sometimes cities have this, just like a whole register of every gym they own in the city. And you can just ask them and get on the list, and then eventually you will get a space. This took forever. So we were really lucky and found a private person who owns a gym who let us rent it, and we just bit the bullet and paid for it. So it's been quite expensive, but if you know that you have enough people, you can take the risk. So it's a gym. Most of the lines we set up there are rodeo lines that we just hang off like the anchors of the basketball nets, and we have one line on a bolt and on another like big structure. That's a rodeo line through the whole gym. And then we have post systems similar to Slacktivity's post systems that we're just lucky that they already had them in the gym. So there's quite a few gyms in Switzerland that have Slackline post systems. Oh, I'm having a little connection loss. And then Tobias Koch asked Toby, hi Toby, I think we met at the THC. How do you personally handle the conflict between having open session with all club members and exclusive events with only your personal Slackline friends? This is a really good question. So you might find yourself in a situation where your personal Slackline friends are not also club members or something like that, or maybe okay, we're back. I'm not sure where it cut off and what it's still still displaying. So I was answering the question how to handle the conflict between going out with friends and going with club members, or like you want to go highlining with friends, and then it kind of comes across as the open session and you're part of the club but you're not taking everyone with you. That can be a conflict. I'm usually just, I mean, if I want to go highline with friends, I'll just go, and if those friends all happen to be off the board, we might turn it into like a SLACKATTACK board trip. So the people who actually do work, for me, it's only fair that those people, you know, can profit a little bit from SLACKATTACK gear and just take it with them. And then we do like one Slack Attack trip a year where the whole club is invited. And I think one a year is already a lot. And if it's super successful, you might do more. But yeah, I find that we have quite a lot of people in the club who just want to slackline in the park and have a good time. And there's not the biggest of conflicts. And I try to do like 1 or 2 like beginner highline days a year where we just go set up some midlines that I normally find a little boring, and we just keep everyone going on those for the whole day until everyone's taken their first leash full or done their first steps, and then teach them as much as we can. But the reality of it is that at the moment we don't have nearly enough women and manpower to like provide highline opportunities for all our stoked highline beginners. So there is a certain conflict there, Toby. I try to just also like look at this from my own perspective. Like, am I motivated to do 10 highline days for beginners a year? No. How many am I willing to do? I just do 1 or 2 or maybe 3, and then I let it at that. Yeah. So Kat asked me, she said it might be a tricky question, but do you ever need to navigate politics? How important are defined roles? In fact, yes and no. I mean, in our statutes, in our articles of association, we basically state that we are not political. We don't subscribe to a certain political agenda, and that's very typical. It's very Swiss to stay neutral. But I can only recommend not taking any political side as an association. I know it's tempting, but as an individual, you can still do that. But I wouldn't directly like ask SLACKATTACK to say, you know, I'm all for something. Do it indirectly. You can say, you know, we think bicycle travel is important and there should be more bicycles in the city. That's kind of a left green thing to say, but I would never like support a political party directly as an association openly. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't do a gig for a political party, but I wouldn't like support them directly necessarily. We're currently fighting for our waterline spot, or fighting. We're actually pretty a long ways along fighting for it, and we are just dealing with a lot of like inner city politics, and those can be very frustrating because the people working for the city, they are, you know, employed by the state, and they are characteristically very slow, and they only work from like 11 to 5 or 11 to 3. So you kind of have to deal with politics in a way. It makes a lot of sense if you're dealing with stuff like that to have someone who's responsible for that kind of work, and then have that person like bring in opinions from everyone every time, because like talking to the city and to officials can be such a minefield, and it's just a good idea to always have everyone's opinion on a certain topic or on a certain way to communicate, because it can backfire pretty quickly. I hope that answers your question, Ken. Johan just pointed out that yes, executing a gig for a political party connects your face and your name to them. Absolutely. I think this is kind of a matter of communication. So I remember we helped the SP, which is a social party of Bern, set up a slackline over the river where they were advocating for building like a bicycle bridge. And it's kind of a small scale local political thing. And for me, it definitely makes a lot of sense that you know, we are, as a slackline association, a bunch of hippies. We're going to be more perceived as on the left side of the political spectrum. And it was kind of a topic that like the whole middle, or at least the whole left side of Bernese politics agreed on. So I thought it was more than okay to do this gig. It's a long time ago. It's no one remembers this, but hey, this is part of your own judgment, I guess. Yeah, Kat just told me she sent us a serious bicycle bias. I'm quite adamant about bicycle policies. I think Switzerland's even more of a bicycle country. Yeah. I think we've been an hour. I think we're gonna cut it at some point. I'm gonna give you like a little more time to maybe give me a comment or two, and then I'm gonna say thank you to all of you for listening. It's been very interesting. Feel free to message me at marc@slacklineinternational.org if you have any questions about SlackAttack, or yeah, mostly about SlackAttack. If you want to see like, you know, a concept that we've written to get an indoor gym, or the concept that we've written to defend our waterline spot, if you want to see stuff like that, just hit me up. I'm happy to help. And yeah, see you around, maybe at some festival. See some of you around soon. And I hope you have a lovely whatever time of day it is where you are. And there's more episodes coming. Check those out in the stream description. And that was it, episode 18 of the lockdown series. See you soon.